All right, hello Instagram and hello YouTube. Welcome to day 5 of OT with DA. My name is Pastor David Asscherick, and I am the DA part of the OT with DA. The OT, of course, is the Old Testament, and as I said, we're on day 5 of our 75-day journey, our 75-day challenge through a large portion of the Old Testament. And welcome, everyone. Great to see people signing in already. Just a few quick greetings here. Hello, Stephen. Deborah says, hello from Southwest Michigan. Great to see you. Hello from Central Colorado. Hello, Margaret. Hello, Grace, Faith, Hope, Love 3. Hello, Michelle. Hello, Mrs. Hungate. Stephen again. Jen, great to see you. Gabby Abby, you know you're one of my favorites. All right, just a few more here. Hello, Marco. Hello, Biggie28. Hello from Adelaide. Wow, I have to be honest. I have been missing Australia lately. I'm going to be in Australia, by the grace of God, in the month of March. In fact, we will finish up OT with DA while I'm in Australia. So this beautiful set that you see here will only be with us for about the first 60 days or 55 days. And then I'm going to have to figure something out when I go to Australia because I'm going there to teach at Arise. And so I've been missing Australia, and I've been missing the sights, sounds, smells, and especially the bird calls. The bird calls in North America, here where we live, are beautiful and wonderful, but the bird calls in Australia are superlatively beautiful, especially the magpie. And there are many, the whipbird. I can't wait. Anyway, I could go on and on about that. Oh, I'm getting a call from my friend in New Zealand. I'll call you later, Adrian. Okay, types and symbols, great to see you. Trisha, great to see you. Katie, great to see you. Stone Doctor, New York City, great to see you. Deb Snyder, great to see you. All right, welcome everybody. Today is, again, day 5 of OT with DA. And where I'm at here in Central Colorado, it is in the evening, 6 o'clock Mountain Time. And we've kind of settled into a little bit of a rhythm here for, at least I have 3 days in a row, all at the same time. And I want to tell you something. There are positives and negatives to doing this in the evening. And the positives are that it's easier on me. I have a lot of time to think about the chapter, not just to read it in the morning for my devotions, which I've done, but also to go back. And today I read it in the morning, and then I read the chapter 2 more times later in the afternoon just before I came here. And it allows me to sort of think and process and maybe make a few additional marks in my journal. But I'm going to be honest, one of the big downsides is that I can't wait for this to happen. When we did DA with DA, for the most part, the meetings were in the morning, and I could get up, I could study, I could have this connection with Jesus, and then immediately, boom, we were right into DA with DA. Now, I have to wait like all day, and I was absolutely giddy, and that's the right word. I was giddy with enthusiasm and energy. 6 o'clock, my time, could not come soon enough today. I was raring to go. And there's a lot going on here. Incredible chapter. We're in chapter 4 titled The Plan of Redemption. Just a couple quick updates. First of all, very good news. I was able to make contact with Dr. John Peckham, who has written many books, including, but not limited to, the book that I recommended yesterday. Oh, somebody says no sound. That can't be the case. Can you hear me? No sound? How can that be? All right. No sound. Okay, that's unacceptable. All right, I'm going to start it over. Okay, ending. No, don't want to share it. Give me just a second here, guys. No, I don't want to share this. Discard live video. Okay, let's try that again. Live. Okay. All right, we're back on Instagram Live. Can you hear me? Let me know if the sound is working. I'm looking for a thumbs up here. Somebody, please. I see lots of people joining. Better, somebody says. Yay! Can you hear me? Sound is back. Okay, I don't know what happened there. I don't know what happened. Anyway, welcome back, everybody on Instagram. Looks like they can hear me. All right, so as I was saying, I was able to make contact with Dr. John Peckham, who has written a number of books, including but not limited to Theodicy of Love, and he is going to be able to join us. Not in studio, but he's going to be able to do at least one, possibly two supplemental sessions. And I really want to rope him in to talk about not only theodicy, which is an area of particular interest and expertise of his, but also to talk about the so-called genocides in the Old Testament. And so I've basically got everybody lined up. I confirmed today with Elise. I've just got one person I'm waiting on to confirm, and that's Sylvia. And we're just waiting to see if we can figure out a date. With all of that said, as I said, I was very giddy, very excited. We lost the sound on Instagram there, but it looks like we're back now. All right, let's pray, and we are off to the races. Father in heaven, I want to thank you for your love and mercy, and especially tonight for the great plan of redemption, the plan of rescue, the plan of restoration. And so, Father, I pray you'll be with all of the listeners, those that are live now on Instagram, and those that will watch later today, and then in the days, weeks, months, and even years to come. Father, what an incredible thing that technology gives us this blessing that people can hear something anytime they want, at any place, and it's amazing, and we're so thrilled. Father, there is no greater message to hear or to broadcast, to preach and proclaim than the message of your saving intention and your saving plan. And so the prayer of my heart is that we get right in, as we get right into OT with DA today, day 5, that you will bless the speaking, that you will bless the hearing, and that you will bless the doing. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen and amen and amen. All right, chapter 4, I'm going to grab my Patriarchs and Prophets. This is the book that we are reading through, Patriarchs and Prophets. And there's 73 chapters. We're going to go through a chapter a day. That's the plan here. And so far, we're on schedule. Day 5. And the reason I say that is when we originally started DA with DA, it was supposed to be a 90-day challenge, but it ended up being a 100-day challenge because we had to move a few things around. And my hope is that we will be able to stick to the 75 days because, as I've already mentioned, my anniversary is right in the early part of April. And I have been asked, not commanded, asked by my wife, if at all possible, to be done before our anniversary, because then we're going to spend a couple weeks on vacation in beautiful Australia with dear friends of ours. So chapter 4 today, titled The Plan of Redemption. And as has been the case, my notes are full. Oh, did you see my word? I hope you didn't. Anyway, my notes today are full. And not only are my notes full, my heart is full. And I want to start by doing something that I haven't done yet up to this point. I'm going to read in the Types and Symbols journal. If you have a copy of the Types and Symbols journal, I'm actually just going to read the summary here, because part of the journal is that there are these little trailer version summaries of the chapter. By the way, if you don't yet have a Types and Symbols journal for Patriarchs and Prophets, or if you don't have a Conflict of the Beautiful, you can still order them at the Types and Symbols online store. If you use the OTwithDA discount code, 10% off, free upgraded shipping. And people have asked, wait a minute, can you use the journals with something other than just the Types and Symbols Conflict Beautiful? And the answer is yes. It works with anything. It works with the digital copy. It would work, I suppose, even with the non-English copies, but certainly works with any copy of the Conflict of the Ages that you can get your hands on. And I'm just going to begin by reading the trailer version here. It says, God refuses to permit the permanent loss of humanity to sin and reveals the plan, the capital P plan, to rescue his children from the results of their disastrous rebellion. The cost and scope of the plan are both triumphant and terrible. And that's why I read this, because I liked that. Man, that's really well communicated. I'll say it again. The cost and scope of the plan are both triumphant and terrible. A divine sacrifice must be made to redeem a fallen world and vindicate the character of God. And that's the other reason I read it. That phrase, to vindicate the character of God, is a key phrase that comes up in this chapter, and we will be there in short order. Okay, the first thing about this chapter, it's just unmistakable, it's obvious, you cannot miss that this chapter, the plan of redemption, does not take a geocentric or even an anthropocentric view of salvation. Geocentric meaning earth-centered, anthropocentric meaning centered on humanity. There is a cosmic, universal perspective here, and it's unmistakable. Not only is there a cosmic, universal perspective, did anybody else detect this? There is a purposeful sequence in the disclosure, the unfolding of that perspective. Now, I know that my good friend Sylvia detected it because she sent me several texts today. She even sent me several pictures of her notes. And if you want to see those notes, you can go to my Instagram story. They're on there. And she says, "Did you see this? I'm so excited." In fact, I wonder if I could, I'm just going to do something I wasn't planning on doing. I'm going to grab my notes and I'm going to read her text. I asked her permission to do this, or at least I think I did. Let me see if I can pull this up. I can't do it on my phone, obviously, because I'm looking at Instagram there. Instagram Live. Let me see if I can pull this up. Can I do this? Yeah, I sure can. Okay, check this out. So I get this text today. First of all, the 1, 2, 3 pictures of her notes, which again, you can see on my Instagram story. Excellent. And then this. Sylvia writes to me, "In today's reading, I noticed that God needs to elicit the consent of everyone in his government to initiate the plan of salvation." Yeah, I like that. Let's continue. First, within the Trinity itself, there is a struggle to go through with it. Finally, it's agreed. We'll go over all this in detail. Just want to read the text. Second, the angels need to be on board. Oh, I like that. Let me turn my sound off. Second, the angels need to be on board. And only then does God announce the gospel to mankind. This from the sequential order of her narrative and the logical order of events. And then I like what Sylvia says. In response to this purposeful sequential revelation, she writes, "This reveals God's MO, or modus operandi, the way he does things, as one of democracy and synergy." Ooh, I like that. Democracy and synergy. That God is purposefully, I like to say, he is involving and he is incorporating everyone that can be involved and can be incorporated into the project. It's not unilateral. Anyway, I'm getting ahead. Let me just read what Sylvia says. "This reveals God's modus operandi as one of democracy and synergy. Every part of the heavenly government has a role to play. There is no monergism." Now, Sylvia's a theologian, so she's using theological language here. She goes on to describe that there is no monergism where God acts unilaterally, where God just acts by himself alone and says, "Hey, this is what I'm doing, and if you all don't like it, you can stuff it." That's not what's happening. He's bringing everybody in to the plan. He's explaining it. There's openness, there's vulnerability, there's transparency, right? There's this incorporation of the whole of the universe, and that's what this chapter does, is it shows that God's saving plan is not just geocentric or anthropocentric, it is cosmic. Okay, let me continue to read. "There is no monergism where God acts unilaterally, rather he elicits the goodwill," ooh, great word, "and assistance of every member of his government. Likewise, she notes that human effort must unite with divine power in achieving 2 things required for salvation: repentance and faith." She says, "I knew I wouldn't be able to get all of this into the comment section tonight, and in my excitement, I just had to share." Thank you, Sylvia, for sharing. And the thing that's so cool about that is that I had detected that myself. Now, she highlighted a couple points that I really liked, and I love the use of the word goodwill there. One of the things that we're seeing from Chapter 1, Why Was Sin Permitted, and all the way up through to today's chapter, including yesterday's chapter as well, the temptation and fall, is that there's this purposeful transparency, this openness that God has toward his creation, right? We've already talked again and again about how God values creaturely freedom and how creaturely freedom is indissolubly connected with God's own nature. God is love, right? But we see here that God delegates. I mean, everything that can be delegated is delegated. And one of the things, as we're going to see in the chapter, that cannot be delegated is the sacrifice itself, is the price to be paid itself. And an angel could not pay this price. She says that twice in this chapter. Did you notice that? 2 times in this chapter, the angels make an offer. The angels make overtures. No, let me be the one. And God's response is, thank you for the offer, but not even the life of an angel could pay the debt. Now, we're going to come back to that point, but I just want to highlight this. God delegates everything that can be delegated to his creation. This is so revealing and it's so incredible because it reveals to us that God is not monergistic, that God is not a tyrant, that God is not just unilaterally making decisions and telling everybody else, this is what's happening, and if you don't like it, well, tough luck. There are, I want to say, without citing any particular denominations or religions, there are versions of God. And I know this because I've listened to lectures and I've listened to debates and I've read books to this effect that basically say, yeah, God can do what God wants because God is God, right? And the sovereignty of God and the power of God and the majesty of God and the unique position of God as God is the most important thing. Well, that's not unimportant, certainly, but the picture that's being painted here, and I'm in full resonance with it in our opening chapters, is that what really matters is God's character, God's governance, and we're beginning to see, and we see it clearly in this chapter, that God is disclosing to everyone so that he can get people on board with his plan. There's no requirement here, no ontological requirement. God can do what God wants. So why does he do this? Well, it's a revelation of his character. It's a revelation that God wants disclosure. He wants transparency. In fact, one of the things that's said in this chapter that if you didn't know this sort of larger narrative that we're discussing here, it might cause you to go, whoa. She says that in this cosmic saving redemptive plan, God himself, God's actions are justified. Now, we're going to get to that in just a little bit, but thank you, Sylvia. And now let's go through this sequentially. And I want to start by just reading the first 2 paragraphs. So I'm on page 70. I'm just going to read these first 2 paragraphs through because they unambiguously set this cosmic narrative, this cosmic perspective. And we get the sense immediately that this is not geocentric and it's not anthropocentric. There's this larger narrative here. And so let's read that. The fall of man filled all heaven. There it is. Immediately we're signaled. All heaven with sorrow. The world that God had made was blighted with the curse of sin, and inhabited beings doomed to misery and death. There appeared no escape for those who had transgressed the law. Angels ceased their songs of praise. Throughout the heavenly courts there was mourning for the ruin that sin had brought. The Son of God, heaven's glorious commander, I really like that language, was touched with pity for the fallen race. His heart was moved with infinite compassion. What a great phrase. Not just compassion, right? But infinite compassion. We'll come back to that a little bit later. As the woes of the lost world rose up before him. But divine love had conceived a plan, a capital P plan, whereby man might be redeemed. The broken law of God demanded the life of the sinner. In all the universe, there was but one who could, in behalf of man, satisfy its claims. Since the divine law is as sacred as God himself, only one, equal with God, could make atonement for its transgression. None but Christ. We've already made the point, but I'm just going to interrupt the paragraph here briefly and say, clearly Ellen White is articulating over and over and over again in this paragraph several times and in chapter after chapter that Jesus is God. He is the equal with God, one in power, one in nature, one in purpose. This is not a low Christology or anything analogous to it. This is a very high Christology. Jesus is God. And she says it here. None but Christ could redeem fallen man from the curse of the law and bring him again into harmony with heaven. Christ would take upon himself the guilt and shame of sin so offensive to a holy God that it must separate Father and his Son. Christ would reach into the depths of misery to rescue the ruined race. Okay, so those two paragraphs really set the tone, right? They set the cosmic tone, the angelic tone. What then follows is this sequential unfolding, and I'll show you that. And I'm just going to add one little element here, and I'll be interested to see, Sylvia, text me on this if you got this, because I think you sent me sort of a threefold sequential revelation. I found a fourfold sequential revelation. You might have as well, because you're a little smarter than me, but let's see. Let's see what happens. First of all, I just want to hop back to those three phrases there in that second paragraph. There was but one, only one, and none but Christ. Okay, this is going to become extremely important in this chapter because, as we've already noted, God delegates wherever he can delegate. It's his nature to employ, to utilize his creation, to honor their creaturely freedom, and he loves their allegiance, and he loves them. Okay, but this was one thing that could not be delegated. A creature could not do what only Christ could do. Well, why is Christ uniquely qualified to stand between the penalty of the law and the sinner? Well, because he's the creator. He is infinitely valuable. He is infinitely holy. And the law that was transgressed was an infinitely holy law. And so only an infinite sacrifice could atone for an infinite breach or an infinite transgression. Now, we'll get to the angelic overtures to step into that role in just a little bit as it comes up in the chapter, but I just wanted to highlight that. Okay, so the first thing that happens, the first of the four sort of sequential revealings here is what we might call the counsel of peace, to quote Zechariah chapter 6, verse 13. You might want to write that down. Zechariah chapter 6, verse 13. Zechariah refers to what is called the counsel of peace. And within the sort of context of that, it emerges that this is the counsel within the plurality of God, right? Within the very Godhead itself. We could say that there is an intertrinitarian dialogue taking place here. And not just an intertrinitarian dialogue, but you get the sense from, this is on page 71, I'm just going to read the opening bit here. Before the Father, he pleaded in the sinner's behalf. There is pain here. In fact, let me just read this just as I wrote it down. The planning, which she quotes Revelation chapter 13, verse 8, right? Jesus Christ is the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. So God's not caught off guard here. God's not like, whoa, surprised. I can't believe this happened. No, the plan of salvation, the plan of redemption existed in the heart of God long before there was a creature to sin, right? Hey, Adrian, stop calling me, buddy. I'll call you later. Okay, long before there was even the opportunity for a creature to rebel and to fail and to fall, the thing that would make for the plan of salvation already existed in the heart of God, which was selflessness. It was love, right? Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, what we sometimes refer to colloquially as the love chapter, says, love seeks not its own. So that selflessness, that self-sacrificial nature exists in the heart of God. It's not external to God. It's not something that God has to put on. No, it's in keeping with his nature because God is love. And yet, the paragraph here reveals that this was not academic. It wasn't formulaic, like, okay, there's a problem, we'll solve it. We have no choice. Of course God has a choice. God is within his moral bounds to say that they have sinned, they have failed, they have fallen. I was very clear in disclosing the results of what would take place, and they now have to suffer the consequences of their actions. This was within the moral portfolio of what was available to God. But God opts not to do that. Even though it would have been just, even though it would have been fair, God enters in, Christ enters into the Father's presence in this counsel of peace, this what we're calling this intertrinitarian dialogue here, and the language is such that you sense that there is pain, right? That it's like, oh, it's saying the sound isn't working. Surely that's not the case. I don't know what's happening with the sound, you guys. I'm so sorry. SOS, people are saying, restart Instagram again. Okay, I'm going to restart Instagram again. Bam. End now. So sorry, give me just a second here. Bam, bam, discard. Let's try it again. Live, checking connection. And we're back. Okay, apologies there. Everybody getting signed on. Great. Do we have sound? Looking. I don't know why we wouldn't have sound. Can you hear me? Instagram. Okay, I hear it. I see a yay. I see a back. Okay, we must be live. Okay. So anyway, the point here is that this was not merely academic or, yeah, gotcha. Okay, people are texting me and telling me there's no sound. It was not merely academic within the Council of Peace. That there was a struggle that takes place, and then maybe a struggle is the wrong word. There was an intense dialogue that takes place because, and I'll say it this way, only God can know truly and actually and exhaustively what the cost of sin is. We don't know that. In the same way that a young child, if the parents come and say, mommy has cancer, a 3-year-old child doesn't comprehend that. Or if dad comes and says, babies, my children, we're bankrupt. Well, child says, oh, okay. Just assumes that everything's going to be okay because the nature of childlike trust and childlike faith is just to trust, well, dad's got this and mom's got this and they're going to take care of it. But the parents know the cost. The parents understand how challenging this is going to be, how difficult and how painful this is going to be, whether it's physical or financial or relational or whatever it might be. You feel me? And so God alone is able to know what the cost will be. God alone looks down through the corridors of time and sees Calvary. Right? The angels don't see Calvary. Adam and Eve certainly don't see Calvary. And even when we see Calvary, even there, we're only seeing the external sort of portrait of what's going on. We don't know what's going on when Jesus says, for example, my God, why have you forsaken me? Or when Jesus stumbles into the Garden of Gethsemane and says, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to the point of death. And so God, as it were, counts the cost of the great plan of redemption. And in doing that, what ends up happening is that they come to peace and they say, yep, this is the thing. Then, just a couple words here. 2 times in that paragraph, the paragraph that begins, same paragraph here, before the Father he pleaded, Ellen White uses the word mystery. Mystery. And that's a very important word in this chapter, and it's actually been a very important word in our chapters up to this point. I'll just read you those. Oh, the mystery of redemption, the love of God for a world that did not love him. Through endless ages, immortal minds seeking to comprehend the mystery of that incomprehensible love will wonder and adore. Okay, to say that something is incomprehensible is to say it's mysterious. And I'm going to guess that some of you chose that word, incomprehensible, as your word for the chapter. That's not my word, but I'll bet that some people said, there's my word. Because it captures this essence of the mystery of the plan, the pain of which and the cost of which is known only, in terms of its exhaustiveness, only to God. Okay, then you have jump down to, not the next paragraph, but the paragraph after that, that begins the plan by which, okay? I'm still on page 71, 64 of the original pagination. The plan by which alone man's salvation could be secured involved all heaven, there's delegation, right? Involved all heaven in its infinite sacrifice. The angels could not rejoice as Christ opened before them the plan of redemption, for they saw that man's salvation must cost their loved commander unutterable woe. In grief and wonder, they listened to his words as he told them how he must descend from heaven's purity and peace, its joy and glory and immortal life, and come in contact with the degradation of earth. To endure its sorrow, its shame, and death, he was to stand between the sinner and the penalty of sin. Now, I mentioned my book yesterday that will eventually be reprinted. And the title of the book is telling. The title of the book is God in Pain. And one of the things that we have to bear in mind is that we see in Scripture, both as a human being, but also pre-incarnation, that God is an emotional being in the sense that God feels joy, He feels elation, He feels sadness, He feels disappointment, and He feels pain. And so when the inter-Trinitarian dialogue, when the Council of Peace decided that they would go forward with this plan, this was painful. It wasn't easy. Again, it wasn't merely academic or formulaic. No, they decided. And then when that decision is made, when the Lamb of God slain from the foundation of the world, when that announcement is made about the plan, she has this great line where she says, the angels could not rejoice. They were like, what? I imagine some of them might have said, that's a terrible plan. What? For these guys, for these disobedient, rebellious, hard-hearted, hard-of-hearing people, what? The commander of no, that's a terrible plan. And then some others say, whoa, I got a better plan. How about if I go? How about if I place my life? How about if I stand, as she says here, to stand between the sinner and the penalty of sin? And just a note on that, a very important note. She does not say that Jesus would stand between the sinner and God. She says that because Jesus is God, Jesus stands between the sinner and the penalty of sin, as we talked about yesterday. The wages of sin is death. She actually quotes that verse again in this chapter. Okay, sinners do not need to be protected from God the Father. Jesus himself said, the Father himself loves you. If you have seen me, you have seen the Father, right? Hebrews says that he is the express image of the Father's person. So Jesus doesn't stand between God the Father, who really wants to pour out his wrath, and the sinner cowers behind Jesus. And there are versions of Christianity and even some Protestant versions of Christianity that depict a kind of three-party atonement, where there's God, there's Jesus, and there's sinners. And Jesus becomes almost a kind of whipping boy between sinners and God to assuage God's, insatiable wrath. No, Jesus is God. God loves us too. Jesus stands between not the sinner and God, but between the sinner and the penalty of sin. The wages of sin is death, not the wages of God is death. And we talked about that yesterday. I'm turning the page now. In the types and symbols, I'm on page 72. And in the original pagination, I'm on page 65. Now, come down to the paragraph that begins, the angels prostrated themselves. Right? This is where the angels make the offer. No. I'll go. I'll stand in. I'll be sacrificed. Angels prostrated themselves at the feet of their commander and offered to become a sacrifice for man. But an angel's life could not pay the debt. Only he who had created man had power to redeem him. That's why she said in that second chapter, but one, only one, none but Christ. Now, why might that be? Why might that be? Well, I've already suggested that an infinitely holy law would require an infinite sacrifice to bridge that chasm. In fact, Ellen White actually uses this phrase, to span the abyss. That's on page 75. To span the abyss. And so I was explaining this to the people whose house I'm in right now, Larry and Cheryl, two of the best people I know. 2 days ago, we were sitting down in their kitchen after one of the sessions, and she was asking me about something that I had said. It's kind of cute, actually, because I'm sitting up here in their house, and they'll be down on Instagram watching me live in their house. And I've said to them, hey, you can just come up if you want and sit in the room. No, we like to watch it on our phones. Anyway, one of the things that I was sort of describing in there is I was saying they have a beautiful dog here, and that dog is their pet. And then Cheryl used to keep these little fish, like little betta fish that you put in a little aquarium. And I said, Cheryl, here's the deal. The distance between you as a human being made in the image of God and that little betta fish or a dog, these are beautiful, wonderful creatures made by God, fashioned by the Almighty, but they are lower life forms. And the distance between you and them is, say, this far, right? Here you are, you occupy a higher state than them, moral, intellectual state than them. And the distance between you might be like this. I said, the distance between, now let's go to an angel. Let's say that an angel occupies a state over here. So the distance between you and an angel would be such that an angel, in some sense, is a higher life form, right? Higher might be not exactly the right word there, but you get the idea. The distance between an ant or a fish or a dog and a human and an angel, whatever those distances are, this is obviously an artificial scale that I'm inventing here. The distance between any of those, you can just compress them together like an accordion, and there's essentially no distance between them in terms of moral, intellectual quality or value, versus God. God, I said, would be like in Orlando, right? On this scale right here, God's like in Orlando, Florida. He's in Nairobi, Kenya, right? The distance between the creator and the created is in an unbridgeable chasm. This is why Jesus, remember, has to become the Logos. He becomes the intermediary. He becomes the communicator between God in his illimitable, ineffable glory and the creaturely world. Okay, so when the angels come and say, hey, no, we'll take the place. We'll stand in the gap. We'll stand in the chasm. I imagine that the Father's heart swells with happiness and swells with appreciation, but also he knows that this is like a child when the parents announce, to the young children that mommy and daddy are bankrupt, and the child says, "Oh yeah, but daddy, I can help because I have some change in my piggy bank, right? I've saved a few dollars, right?" And the father would say, or the mother would say, "Oh, that's so sweet, thank you so much, but you can't pay this debt. You could give all that you have, and it would still fall so far short of," and she makes this point twice. She makes it right here on page 72, right? "But an angel's life could not pay the debt," and she makes it on the next page, page 74. I'll read it here. It says, "They were told that since the law of Jehovah is the foundation of his government in heaven as well as upon earth, even the life of an angel could not be accepted as a sacrifice for its transgression." You might want to write down this verse. Write down the verse, Hebrews chapter 10, verse 4. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 4. It says that it is not possible. Ooh, that's another idea, concept, and word that comes up quite a little bit in this chapter. And I'll get to that in just a second. It says it is not possible that the blood of bulls and goats can take away sins. Well, what do bulls and goats have in common with human beings and angels? That's easy. We're all created beings. And again, the distance between a fish, right, and an angel might seem like, whoa, that's a huge difference. The difference between us and a goldfish, that's a huge difference. Sure, it is. But on the scale of the distance between any created thing and God, we are just all compressed together. And so when the angels say, hey, he said, that's cute, that's nice, appreciate the offer, but not going to work. Not going to work. Now, on that same page, stay on page 72, the language of necessity is used over and over and over again. Did you notice it? I imagine some of you did. This is on page 65 of the original. Okay, I see some people saying my page numbers are different. I get that. This is 65 of the original. Listen to this. This is in the paragraph that actually continues from the page before. The paragraph begins with the plan by which alone man's salvation could be secured. It's a long paragraph, and it goes all the way on to the next page in the types and symbols. Listen to this language. Have to, necessary, in order, be able, he must, he must, he must. She also, in this chapter, uses the language of impossible. Okay, all of that language of necessity communicates that it was God alone who could do this, and that the law required that it be done in a certain way. And all of this is explained to the angels, and that's what's taking place here. Remember, we're in the second sequence. First, there was the Council of Peace, where they decide among themselves. Then there's the revelation to the angels. Now jump with me over to page 73. This is 66 in the original pagination, and the paragraph begins, happily enough, to man. And this is number 3. This is where the revelation now takes place to human beings, and this is what we find in Genesis 3. Basically, I'll just read that, actually. I've got my Bible here. I'll read this section. Here's where the disclosure that had already been given to the angelic realm is now given to Adam and Eve in the garden. Remember, they've sowed fig leaves. They've hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden. And God comes down walking in the garden. I'll pick it up in verse 8. So they hide themselves in verse 8, verse 9. Then the Lord God called to Adam and said, "Where are you?" This is not man in search of God, but God in search of man. God goes looking for man, not the other way around. So he said, "I heard your voice in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself." And he said, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded you that you should not eat?" Then the man said, "Well, the woman that you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree and I ate." Now, tomorrow, Jen will be with us for our first session with Jennifer Schwarzer. And then on Saturday, we're going to have not only the DA with DA, the session, but we're going to do a supplemental session where we're going to talk about marriage and gender roles and the transition from pre-sin to post-sin. We're going to have a whole conversation. And Jen texted me today. She said, "You don't have to worry about that. I've got that all planned. I know what we're going to talk about." So I can probably just be quiet and she will largely talk. So I'm looking forward to that. But clearly there's a change here, right? Like the woman that you gave to be with me. Now, I should just briefly say here that when Adam and Eve hide and when they sow fig leaves, they are making an assumption about God's posture toward them. They are making an assumption about God's attitude toward them. And if you get this, I'm just going to say this very quickly. And if you get it, great. And if you don't, I don't have a lot of time to dwell on it. But Adam and Eve assume mistakenly that their internal feelings of guilt and condemnation are an accurate reflection and an accurate picture of how God feels about them. That is not the case. They assume that their internal voice of condemnation, their internal sense of guilt and of shame is how God feels. In fact, the opposite is true. God has come into the garden after them, pursuing them, loving them, to tell them that everything's going to be okay and a way of escape has been made. In fact, if Adam and Eve could have understood, if they could have somehow miraculously been transported into the heart of God and God's emotions toward them, God's feelings toward them, they would not have run from God, they would have run to God. They would have raced to him and thrown themselves into his embrace. Instead, they take the posture of self-preservation and of fear and of shame, and so immediately, no, it was her fault. And then Eve's like, no, it's actually your fault because you made the serpent. Okay. Verse 13, and the Lord God said to the woman, "What is this that you have done?" And the woman said, "The serpent deceived me and I ate." And implicit inside of that statement is that why did you make this silly serpent? Why did you put that tree in the garden, right? That God is somehow, remember I read that great section yesterday where I said that this was just great writing? Remember that section? Go back and listen to it. Okay. Verse 14, then the Lord God said to the serpent, "Because you have done this, you are cursed more than all cattle and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you will go. You will eat the dust all the days of your life." Verse 15, maybe the most important verse in all of Genesis chapters 1, 2, and 3. "I will put enmity or hatred between you and the woman, between your offspring and her offspring. Capital He will bruise your head, and you will bruise his heel." Right? He will bruise. Some translations say he will crush your head and you will bruise his heel. And so Adam and Eve now have the plan disclosed to them. Now, this is obviously in very, shrunk down language, very shrunk down, tight language. But presumably, God explains to them the same kind of thing that he explained to the angels. Right? And that here's what's going to happen. In fact, even in the text here, Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, it's clear that the deliverer will be a wounded deliverer. Right? That God himself, that the deliverer himself will not get off scot-free. His heel will be wounded, but the serpent's head will be crushed. And so right there, embryonically, in this first gospel promise, is the anticipation, the foreshadowing that this will be costly even to God, right? This isn't the knight in shining armor or the superhero who comes in, defeats all the bad guys, and gets away unscathed because no one can touch him. He's a cut above. No, that's not what's happening here. God is going to bear, in some sense, even here embryonically, the pain, the crushing, the bruising, the penalty of sin. And this is disclosed to Adam and Eve, right? To man, this was communicated. She says in the same paragraph that they stood before God as criminals, right? They're condemned. They know they're condemned. God knows they're condemned. And then you have the fourth revelation. So number one is the Council of Peace. This is how Ellen White paints it here in the Great Controversy in chapter 4. So number one, the Council of Peace, the intertrinitarian dialogue. Number two, the revelation to the angels. Number three, the revelation to Adam and Eve. And then fourthly, to Satan. Fourthly, to Satan. And you see that right? I'm on page 73. And I like to say it this way. Satan heard the good news last of all. And not because God would not have been totally happy to have told Lucifer the good news, first of all, if Lucifer had still been Lucifer and some other angel had rebelled. If Lucifer had remained in his privileged position, he would have been one of the first to know. But when he separated himself from God, God didn't say, well, I'm not going to tell you. He became the last to know. He was on the outside looking in, not by God's decision, not by God's, unilateral decree, but because he had removed himself from the inner confidence of the angelic host. And so the intertrinitarian dialogue, then the revelation to the angels, then the revelation to mankind, and finally, last of all, you almost get the sense here, and I wrote in my notes here, that Satan's just kind of overhearing, right? God's just announcing the good news, and it does say it was spoken to the serpent, but I like to think of it as Satan's almost incidental here. God's going to do what God's going to do, independent of what Satan is going to do from this point forward. Satan has dealt his blow. He's achieved his temporary victory in battle. And God comes down, announces the good news. He's already announced the good news to the angels. He announces it to Adam and Eve. And Satan is almost incidental in the sense that what can he do about it? He's just heard that his head is going to be crushed. I love it. Satan is last of all. Okay, turning the page here. There's a lot of great stuff I'm skipping over, obviously, and that's always going to be the case. I try to keep these as close to an hour as possible. Then one of the great themes that emerges on pages 74 and 75, this is on page 67 of the original pagination, is this emphasis on the word dominion. She uses the word 5 times. Dominion, 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 dominion. And all I'm going to say about that is that apparently in some legal sense, okay, this is important. Apparently in some legal sense, when God placed Adam and Eve in the garden as his representatives, that they occupied a kind of stewardship or managerial role over the earth. That they were God's representatives on earth and for earth. And you get little hints of this in Job 1 and 2 when it says the sons of God came to present themselves before God. And you get this sense, you also pick it up in Revelation where it talks about the elders, right? The elders and the angels and the four living creatures that, again, back to delegation. God delegates to Adam and Eve the representation and the stewardship of earth. Why does the earth need stewardship? God could make plants so they don't need stewarding. God could make the biological world so it doesn't need stewarding. No, Adam and Eve are placed, they are delegated into a place of stewardship. And apparently, when they listen to the words of the enemy, when they transition in their loyalty from God to the enemy, some legal transaction took place. And in some, at least provisional sense, the stewardship and the representation of this earth was given over to Satan. And again, you see that in Job, because in Job 1 and 2, when all the sons of God come to present themselves before God, it says that Satan also came among them. And you get the sense there, the sort of read between the lines, that Satan is representing earth. He's there to sort of stake his territorial claim, and then God contests that territorial claim. This is very important. And then God responds to Satan's territorial claim by saying, have you considered my servant Job? In other words, you do not have full possession of the territory that you are legally claiming as yours. Right? He contests that Satan has full control over the territory that he alleges to represent. Because you don't represent Job. You don't represent Job. Job is my guy. Job is my man. Now, there's another little hint of this in the temptation of Christ in the wilderness. And just very briefly, when Jesus goes into the wilderness, when he's led there by the Spirit, one of the temptations is the third temptation, where it says that Satan made all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them to pass before Jesus in Jesus' emaciated and fatigued state, right? He's already tried to, turn these stones into bread, didn't work. He tried to cast yourself down from the temple, and then now he just puts all of his cards, shoves all of his chips to the middle of the table, and he shows them all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them, and he says, I will give this to you. I will give this to you on a single condition, if you just bow down and worship me. Now, the temerity here, the audacity here, again, of the created demanding or requiring that the creator bow down to worship him is so repulsive to Jesus, so unpalatable to Jesus, that he says, get behind me, Satan. You are ridiculous. That's just absurd. But you get the point. When he offers him the kingdoms of this world, notice that Jesus never disputes that it's his to offer. Jesus never disputes that in some legal sense, Satan had a kind of representative occupation of this world. And so she uses the word dominion in that next chapter. And it's crucially important to understand that what's happening here is that God is not only, in fact, this is so cool. God is not only going to win back the dominion of earth that Satan claims as his legal stronghold, right, for his governance and his ideas and his ideologies. Satan claims the human heart as his stronghold. Bam! Which is why there needs to be enmity or hatred between Adam and Eve and their offspring and their so-called representative. That's so hot, right? Because she actually talks about the dominion in an earthly sense, in a territorial sense, in a geographical sense. But the dominion is also us. Who will we be represented by? And I'll just say this very briefly. When we are born as descendants of Adam, we are born into a world that is legitimately, legally occupied in some sense by Satan as its representative. Adam is our father, and we're born into that world. This is why it's so essential and it's so wonderful that we are born again. Because when we're born again, Satan is no longer our representative. Adam is no longer our father. Jesus is our representative, and God is our father. Very cool. Okay, so she gets into the dominion thing, and very important, very important. She then does a very cool thing, just very briefly. She takes a couple Old Testament promises that were about the occupation of the land, Isaiah 45:18 and Psalm 37:29, and she applies them to the occupation of the redeemed in the new heaven and the new earth. Very cool. Very cool and very theologically sound. Next paragraph, she uses the phrase Christ alone again. Now I'm on page 76 and 77. She does this really cool thing where she describes that God in the Garden of Eden basically shows Adam the history of the human race. I mean, how dark would that have been? How painful would that have been? How hard would that have been for Adam to see that this is not going to be, just the sweeping under the rug of some, minor infraction, some, local city ordinance or regional law has been broken. God, in some kind of prophetic vision, shows Adam, and this is the paragraph that begins, thus were revealed to Adam important events in the history of mankind. It's bloody, it's unjust, it's terrible, it's dark, it's dreary. And you can imagine, Adam would have thought, I had no idea. I had no idea. And here's a really cool thing, very cool practical point. I imagine that if in that moment Adam could have understood and said, whoa, if I would have known then what I know now, I wouldn't have partaken of the fruit. If I would have known that. Okay, how many of us have done this? You've sinned, you've failed, you've fallen. You've sinned, you've failed, you've fallen. And in the moment, right, when the sin is enticing and there's that titillation and that exhilaration that we talked about yesterday, you think, yeah. And then when you find yourself on the other side of it, in the wake of it, how often do we say, man, if I would have known then what I know now, I wouldn't have done that. Hallelujah, ladies and gentlemen. That's how you get victory over sin. That's how a just man falls 7 times and rises up again. When you rise up again, hey, I learned that lesson. I'm not doing that again. Because I've said to myself before, wait a minute, if I had known this before I did that, I wouldn't have done that. And now I know this, so I'm not going to do that. And so I can just imagine as the history of the earth and of humankind is laid out before him, all he could think was, I wish I would have known. And now he does know. We all know. In fact, I could get excited about this. We'll talk about this later. But one of the things that's happening is that God, in his plan of redemption, the great plan of redemption, he's inoculating the universe against sin ever rising again. Okay? All right, and on the next page, she uses this, I'm on the paragraph that begins, but the plan of redemption had yet a broader, deeper purpose. The broader, deeper purpose is not just man-centered, it's not just earth-centered. She says it was to vindicate the character of God, and I highlighted that. I put a box around it. You should know that one of the ministry that I am employed by and that I have been a part of for the last 12 years, Light Bearers, our mission statement, literally the Light Bearers mission statement is to vindicate the character of God. Exactly what's here. I took a picture of this today. I highlighted it, took a picture of it and sent it to Ty and to Don and to Emil and said, hey guys, our mission statement is inspired. I just want to live to vindicate the character of God. I want people to know through the person that is David Asscherick, through the mouth that is mine, God is good, God is amazing, God is awesome, God is beautiful, God can be loved, God can be worshiped, God can be trusted. Over and against the competing views and versions of God that make God decidedly ugly and unattractive and even repulsive, I want to vindicate the character of God. Okay, I think that's enough for us here. Let me just look. There's one major point that I did not highlight because it involves my word. But before I reveal that, let me just see if there's anything I missed. Okay, we went through the sequence. God first, angel second, humankind third, Satan last. Let me just look at my notes here, my notes, and see if I missed anything. High Christology, the word mystery. Oh, she uses the word redeem, recover, restore. I think she even uses the word rescue. Those words occur quite a little bit in this chapter. We talked about dominion. We talked about Adam being shown the long, bloody history of earth. Oh, one thing we didn't talk about was she describes that to Adam and Eve, the sacrificial system was introduced. The sacrificial system was introduced. And she says that this was brutal. She says that when that first lamb, when that first animal was slain, that Adam trembled, couldn't believe that he had to bring, and then it was, the Australians would say the penny dropped. He understood. Whoa. And this is obviously going to become important for us is it our next chapter? Cain and Abel? Cain and Abel, right? The difference between sacrifices that bleed and sacrifices that don't bleed will become important for us tomorrow. But as Adam, had the sacrificial system taught to him by God, one of the jobs of the priests in the Old Testament, we'll see this, is to teach the people, to help them to understand what a sacrifice is and what a sacrifice isn't. We're going to get to this when we get especially to the sacrifice of the near sacrifice of Isaac on top of Mount Moriah by Abraham. We'll get there. But one of the jobs of the priest is to explain the sacrifice, to instruct. So God himself, Christ himself, as the priest, the high priest, explains to Adam what's going on there. And then at some point he has to explain to him that, now you have to kill the lamb. And I said, what? What? Yeah, you have to kill the lamb. And that just would have been unthinkable. I mean, in a world where there's no death, blood, guts, death. So anyway, and very interestingly to me, it says in Genesis chapter 3, verse 21, that God made them tunics of skins. Well, of course, the only way to get tunics of skins is for an animal to be slain. And the skins that they would have worn, I imagine, would have been from the sacrifice and sacrifices that were made by them. And Ellen White doesn't make that point expressly, but there's no doubt in my mind that that is exactly what's being communicated in Genesis chapter 3, verse 21, because when we get to the very next chapter, it's all about bloody versus non-bloody sacrifice. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. To vindicate the character of God, Satan thought that he had gained possession of this world. Another interesting point was, he thought that he had gained possession of this world. We talked about dominion, and he thought he had gained possession of the human heart. And did you catch this line? That he thought forgiveness would be impossible. He thought forgiveness, there's no way to forgive. I mean, I've violated, I have transgressed, and so now there is no way that forgiveness can happen. He did not conceive of the plan of salvation. He just was like, what? Enmity between you and crushing and all of that. I mean, even up until the point of Jesus hanging on the cross, he would have seen the sacrificial. He never got it. Because to understand what's taking place in the sacrifice of Jesus, you'd have to be capable of understanding the very notion of self-sacrifice, of selflessness. And this was increasingly impossible for Satan to conceive of. It wasn't an intellectual problem, because he has a mind clearly in advance of our minds. It was a moral problem. He couldn't get his mind around it, which is why he stupidly and ill-advisedly actually played into the very hands of God's saving plan when he put Jesus on Calvary's cross, and Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And then finally breathed his last breath, "Into your hands, Father, I commit my spirit." Satan thought momentarily, I got him. Only to realize, I suppose, in the next moment or moments, oh, wait a minute. The Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world. In gaining a seeming victory, I actually sealed my own fate. And she says that in this chapter. She literally says that in this chapter. Let me just quickly find it, and then we'll get to the rubric. She says, I'll read it here. It's got to be right here. Where was it? I thought I highlighted it. Did I write it here? Oh yeah, page 79. When Christ died, the destruction of Satan was made certain. He might have understood that intellectually, but I don't even think so. I think he was incapacitated from understanding it. He certainly didn't understand it morally. All right, let's get to the rubric. Here we go. The point, the person, the prayer, the practice, the promise. This was an incredible chapter. I loved the cosmic perspective, loved the sequential unfolding from the intertrinitarian dialogue and the Council of Peace, finally to the angelic host and the delegation and all that would take place there, then to mankind, and last of all, to Satan himself, who was didn't understand it. Even with his brilliant angelic mind, it would have gone right over his head. He missed it. He would have understood it in, sketches, but he was incapacitated morally from grasping what made God God. When Satan wanted to be like God, when he wanted to occupy the position of God, he wanted to be like God in nature and in power, but not in character. And his rebellion changed his nature and literally, to some degree, incapacitated himself from understanding the nature of love and the nature of self-sacrifice. Okay, so here we go. What was the point of this chapter? Because this is what we do at the end. For those of you that are just tuning in here, at the end of our session, we go through the 5-point rubric: the point, the person, the prayer, the practice, the promise. So what was the point of this chapter? I wrote to tell the story of God's eternal and infinite plan of redemption through an enormous cosmic lens. Okay? Great. Number 2, what do we learn about the person? God is infinitely compassionate, self-sacrificial, good, just, righteous, and merciful. God is transparent and wants to love and be loved and to be understood. Okay? Now, just a little hint. I actually just used my word right there. I just used my word, but I'm going to come back. Okay, my prayer, I just went straight Ephesians 3 in my prayer, right? Here's my prayer. You ready for this? I just went Ephesians 3 in my prayer. Let's go. Corinthians, Thessalonians. Here we are. Galatians, Ephesians. Ephesians 3. Listen to this. Ephesians 3, beginning in verse 14, all the way down to verse 21. Ephesians 3, beginning in verse 14. For this reason, says Paul, I kneel before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name. I pray that out of his glorious riches he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all of God's holy people, to grasp how wide, how long, how high, and how deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge. That's an interesting thing to say. To know something that surpasses knowledge. To know something that can't be known, that can't be fully known. Paul's saying, I hope you can understand it to the extent that you can understand it. This is our point about Satan. He can't understand it. And so Paul's praying, he's saying, I'm praying that you will be, I'm going to read that again. And to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work inside of us. To him be glory in the church, in Christ Jesus, throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. Come on now. That's my prayer. Ephesians 3, 14 to 21. Boom. All right. Fourthly, the practice. How do we practice this chapter? Well, I have 2 points of practical application. Number 1, to choose Jesus every day. To choose Jesus every day. And the reason I say that, remember that when Jesus revealed to Adam the long, bloody, sordid history of humanity, Adam saw that the sacrifice of Jesus would be sufficient that all the world could be saved. She says, but some would choose to not accept the sacrifice. And this was perfectly mysterious to Adam. What? Some won't accept? You mean everybody could, but some won't? Some will choose? And Jesus said, yeah, that's exactly right. Right? And so for me, point of practical application, I don't want to be among that population that choose not to choose Jesus. And then number 2, I want to live to vindicate the character of God. As a father, I want my sons to say, the God that dad serves, I want to serve that God. The God that I serve, I want my wife to say, the God that David tells us about, the God that David prays to, that I want, not just my sons and my wife, but of course it starts there. I want my parents and my neighbors and my family members and my friends and the people that I just meet. I spend time in the rock climbing community at least with quite a significant number of people that are not members of my community of faith. And I am unapologetic about who I am and what I do and what I'm passionate about, and they just know that's me, right? I'm the guy that doesn't swear. I'm the guy that's always happy. I'm the guy that's always optimistic. I'm the guy that's always encouraging people that, oh yeah, you can do this. You just got to grab that little side pole, make the big, I'm that guy. And listen, I'm not going into deep, theological study with a lot of these people, but they know, or at least I hope they know, that the God that I believe in, he's really cool. He's really awesome. He's amazing. He can love and be loved. And so I want to choose Jesus every day, and I want to live to vindicate the character of God. And then finally, the promise, right? The point, the person, the prayer, the practice, the promise. Here's my promise. Think about this. If Adam and Eve could have, and these are quotes from the book, from the chapter, if Adam and Eve could have hope, if they could believe the promise, and if they could, quote, look forward to final victory, then so can I. then so can I. In other words, if God can save the people that tipped this boulder off of the cliff and sent the whole thing to hell in a handbasket, if God can save those people, if Adam and Eve can have hope, if Adam and Eve can believe, if Adam and Eve can look forward to final victory, well, then David Asscherick can. Then I can too. I can too, and so can you. So that's the promise. The promise is God will be ultimately victorious. Again, not primarily by the strength of his nature, but by the beauty and loveliness of his character. All right, now we're to the word. Here's what I want to know. Sylvia, I'm particularly interested in what your word was. So let's go. What was your word? And I am super interested to see if anybody had the same word that I had. All right, tell me what you got. Promise, good word. Redeemed, good word. Yes, you're quoting John chapter 12. Excellent. She quotes John chapter 12, verse 32 as well. Scapegoat, interesting. Atonement, hope. Victor Mills says redeemed, good word. Love, good word. Restored, says Jen. I haven't seen my word yet. Steadfast, so I'm getting kind of giddy. But, I like it. Triumph. Sylvia says sacrifice and vindication. First of all, you're not allowed to have two words, Sylvia, so that's not going to work. But both of those are great words. You just have to choose one. Promise, humble, vindicate, rescue, victory, atonement. Still haven't seen my word. Rescued. Still haven't seen it. Christ, compassion. These are all great words, by the way, every one of them. And remember, there's no right answer or wrong answer here. This is what God spoke to you. Transparent, understood. Kendra says cosmic. Jen says lol. I don't think that's your word. I think you're just laughing at me. Michelle says joy. Phenomenal. Rescue. Restored. I'm going to keep going. Love. Nobody has my word. Mercy. Understand. Willing. Redemption. Stronghold. I like it. Hope. No, nobody's going to get it. No, Reiner says sacrifice. Trust. These are all excellent words. Results. Restoration. Okay, are you ready? Participation. Pain. Excellent. Every time there's a word on there that, I could see that. Oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, I thought about that. Okay, here's my word. Are you ready for this? I'm kind of surprised. I'm not disappointed. I want to be clear. I don't want to make it out like, I'm the one that's got the right answer. I'm not disappointed, but I am a little surprised. Michelle says, my first word was depths. Hot. Okay, here we go. You ready? My word is infinite. Infinite. Did you notice that Ellen White in this chapter says, and I wrote it down here, that she says that God has infinite compassion, page 70, that an infinite sacrifice would be required, not the life of an angel, not the life of any creature. Page 71, an infinite sacrifice. She speaks of his infinite goodness, page 77. And then in the very last, let me just read you the last line here, the very last line. It says, last sentence, the very fact that Christ bore the penalty of man's transgression is a mighty argument to all created intelligences that the law is changeless, that God is righteous, merciful, and self-denying, and that infinite justice and mercy unite in the administration of his government. Infinite justice and mercy. So you have infinite compassion, infinite sacrifice, infinite goodness, infinite justice, and infinite mercy. And remember that yesterday we talked about God as the infinite framer and upholder of all. Yeah, my word was infinite because it requires an infinite sacrifice. Because God is infinitely good. He is infinitely compassionate. Never think for a moment, friend, that you have outsinned God's grace. You might sin to such a terrible degree that you incapacitate yourself like Lucifer did, like Satan did, to understand God's moral requirements and standards. That can happen. We can incapacitate ourselves, but you can't sin. You can't sin enough that God's infinite compassion, his infinite goodness, his infinite mercy. The word infinite means cannot be counted, cannot be numbered. When people are finally lost, tragically, terribly, in the final analysis when people are lost, It will not be because there wasn't room enough in the heart of God. There wasn't room enough in the infinite sacrifice of Jesus to accommodate their sin. It will be because they chose not to avail themselves of God's infinite mercy, infinite justice, infinite sacrifice, infinite goodness, infinite compassion. No one in the final analysis is lost because God lacks something that they need. No, people are lost not because there's a lack of capacity in God, but because there's a lack of capability or of willingness in a hardened, rebellious, contemptuous human heart. So my word was infinite. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was day 5, chapter 4, apologies for the sound. I have no idea what happened. And I'll just upload a partial version, and I'll explain in the comments what happened. Remember, tomorrow night, I'm so glad I thought of this. Tomorrow we're at 7 o'clock, so 1 hour later, because Jen has something that she has to do between 6 and 7. So we'll be on at 7 o'clock Mountain Time tomorrow. Chapter 5, Cain and Abel tested. It's going to be amazing. Pray for Jen's travel, and we're going to close with prayer right now. Father in heaven, this has been a great session. I've been giddy all day, and I just hope that through my energy here and all of the words that I have spoken, just blah, 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 all these words, that people have been able to grasp in some way, Father, through the reading and through their praying and through their journaling and through the time that we spend together here, to grasp in some small way. I pray, Father, the same for myself. The infinite sacrifice, the infinite goodness, the infinite compassion, the infinite justice and mercy that is available to us from the infinite framer and upholder of all. Father, we pray in the name of Jesus, and we praise you for the great plan of redemption. Amen and amen.